Thank you for tuning in to watch the Clayton Chamber of Commerce 2020 Platforms at the Podium video series. My name is Brad Palmer and I am the chair of the Clayton Chamber's Legislative and Governmental Affairs Committee. This political forum video series serves as a key initiative for this committee. This year, the CCOC will feature races for North Carolina Superintendent of Public Instruction, North Carolina House, North Carolina Senate, Johnston County Commissioners, and the Johnston County Public Schools Board of Education. Each video will be released individually as part of a series, so I highly encourage you to visit the Clayton Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel to watch each video on the 2020 Platforms at the Podium's playlist. All candidates for each race were invited to participate, and the candidates you see in the video are those that responded and agreed to appear. Each of the candidates were given 60 seconds to answer each of 3 questions, plus an additional 60 seconds for a closing statement. The video will flow from one question to another. Each candidate's answer will be shown in alphabetical order by last name. Each viewer is encouraged to watch this video in its entirety in order to make the most informed decision you can at the polls in November. And thank you again for watching.
I think I'm the best candidate because I'm the most needed candidate. 32% of the voters in this state are registered unaffiliated, and we have 0 representation in the General Assembly. The people of District 26 are lucky to have 3 very worthy candidates that would all represent Johnston County extremely well. But I'm the only candidate in the entire state so tired of the discord between our 2 major parties that I decided to take a stand and speak up for those of us in the political middle. All we hear is Republican versus Democrat, but there are millions of people in this state who aren't either one and who believe there is common ground to be found on every single issue. I think our legislature needs a daily reminder of that, and I believe 1/3 of this state finally needs representation.
I'm Representative Donna McDowell White. I have served in that capacity since January 17 and been the only woman to go to the House from Johnston County. I'm also a registered nurse. I've served in the county in public health, home care, and pediatrics. I'm committed, enthusiastic, energetic, and experienced. I've served on the Johnston County Board of Education from 2004 to 2016. I'm a registered nurse, and I now chair Health and Human Services Appropriation, Vice Chair for the House Committee for Health, House Committee for Appropriations, and I also serve on Education, K-12, and Environment. I've won 6 Legislator of the Year awards in the last 3.5 years and 4 special recognitions. I serve my constituents 24/7, 365, and I would appreciate the opportunity to take that experience back to Raleigh. Thank you.
I'm a high school math and exceptional children's teacher at a high-poverty Title I high school. My heart is in public education, but I also understand that a large percentage of our population wants to see a little more choice in education. The biggest issue for me is to find a way for those 2 ideologies to coexist, and to do so while showing that we care a little bit more about education. I can't believe we are satisfied with being 44th in the nation in per pupil spending. It won't take long before that abysmal spending level and our children's academic level equal each other, and I don't want to see that happen. The education of our children should be one of the most nonpartisan issues we face, and I believe there is a way, through constructive dialogue and creativity, that the 2 sides can find common ground and do what's right for the children of this great state.
The coronavirus is actually the biggest issue that North Carolina has ever faced at one time, and certainly in District 26 it's the same. The Speaker, early in March, when we realized that coronavirus was in North Carolina, he took 59 of the 120 legislators and divided us up into 4 working groups. I was given the opportunity to chair that for health. what each committee was assigned to do is to develop policies and procedures and be ready for the CARES Act funding that would be coming in, and take some of our state money and mix that together and make sure that North Carolina got $2 billion around the first week in May with policies and procedures, and the bills were passed by the House, Senate, and the governor. So we are actively using that money and processing those 4 areas of health, education, local and state government, and the economy.
This question has 2 vastly different answers. Our legislature is hopeful that the federal government will provide stimulus funds to cover the proposed 25% that we're going to be losing in revenue. If that happens, we suddenly have almost nothing to worry about. If it doesn't, we're in a situation where there are no winners. Taking funds away from health and human services or education means we're taking them away from the people who need them most. If you take it away from transportation or public safety, you're affecting jobs and infrastructure and potentially impacting our everyday way of life. There simply are no winners, but since we're required to balance a budget, we have to share the cuts as much as possible. I believe the federal government will help us make this decision much easier, but if not, the only reasonable way might be to underfund every budgetary line item as equitably as possible, and that, of course, would be bad.
North Carolina is one state that is in as good a shape as we could possibly be in before the virus hit, and we are going to dig out of this hole. We are anticipating a revenue shortfall of about $5 billion, which would be about 1/5 of the North Carolina $24 billion state budget. We do know that we have some good, strong savings accounts that we have been developing over the last 5 to 6 years. That has helped us through the virus already, and we are anticipating having to dip into those accounts. We also know that we are anticipating some additional money from the HEALS Act, which is the federal money. With that infusion, with our good budgeting process, and with our good tax reform, we will move forward. We will rebound in a positive state, and North Carolina will be greater. We're already, in the last 2 weeks, been given 2 additional awards for our best business climate, and we will continue to grow and be the North Carolina that many of you have moved to for the good business climate that we have.
Elections in the U.S. are basically set up for 2 parties. Independents and third-party candidates have historically had no real chance to win. That needs to change. I don't want to be a Democrat or Republican. A lot of you watching this don't want to either. There are so many things you can't be if you were a member of either party. You can't be a Christian or support gun rights and be a Democrat. You can't empathize with someone who wants to get an abortion or vote by mail and be a Republican. We've become a country of labels, not people, and that just doesn't work for me. We're a country of 330 million very different people who have to work really hard to coexist. Our parties aren't doing a good job of showing their desire to coexist right now. There are at least 1/3 of us that don't want to tolerate that anymore. The only way this toxic partisanship ends is for the political middle to rise up and be just as loud and just as included in the making of our laws as the extremes on both sides. I'd be honored if you gave me that chance.
I just want to thank the Chamber and its staff and team members for all that they've done to put on this platforms at the podium. I think it's a wonderful idea, and it gives the people of District 26 the opportunity to see the candidates and the incumbents. I appreciate that opportunity. My motto is that I attack problems, not people. I take that very serious, and I have worked during the coronavirus, I've worked 22 hours a day, and prior to that I was usually working about 16 to make sure that the citizens of Johnston County had access to Donna White at all times, 24/7, 365. The Chamber gave me the Citizen of the Year Award in January for a lifetime of commitment and service, and that is what I bring to the House, and that is what I hope to continue to bring to the House in November of 2020. Thank you.
I believe my background and experience proves that I am the best choice to represent District 11 in the North Carolina Senate. As a county commissioner, I saw firsthand the challenges that face rural and urban areas. As a representative in the North Carolina House, I've supported legislation raising teacher pay, expanding broadband, and increasing penalties against law enforcement officers. I've lived in this area my entire life, and I have been actively involved in my community, serving on local boards and volunteering for nonprofits and teaching Bible study classes in my church. Aside from public service, I work with my husband and my son in our agribusiness growing sweet potatoes and other crops. I know what it means to make a payroll and to provide jobs. I also was raised on a farm where I learned firsthand that hard work builds character, endurance, and muscles. And as a woman in the political world, all three are needed to get the job done.
I am Alan Mullins. I'm happy to be here today to talk to the Clayton Chamber and local voters in Johnston and Nash County. I have experience serving in the State Senate, representing Eastern North Carolina for 6 years. I am the type of person who sees a problem and finds a solution. I ask voters to look at my record of working across the aisle to solve issues of health care, education, and creating better jobs for Eastern North Carolina. We made great progress in all of these areas, but the regressive policies of the current legislative leadership have dragged us backward. I am the best candidate for the job because I will work to make sure we pass legislation that will enable our children and grandchildren to have the same benefits and opportunities as previous generations. I was voted the most effective voice in the legislature for women and children. I want to return so you will have that same voice in the Senate.
The COVID-19 crisis is by far the #1 issue impacting all the citizens in Senate District 11. Our businesses have been hit hard, families have lost loved ones, our classrooms have been replaced by computer screens, and healthcare providers have been fighting on the front lines against this virus. I'm proud to have been involved in the General Assembly's quick response to the COVID-19 outbreak and provide relief for small businesses, PPE for healthcare providers, funding for schools and universities, and common sense regulatory reforms. My priority in this session is to provide a second round of unemployment insurance benefits. I will focus on additional COVID relief funding and target other resources that are needed. I want to reduce regulations and promote policies to build a stronger and healthier North Carolina.
Education. North Carolina is seriously underfunding our public schools and is violating our state constitution, as shown by the Leandro case. I want to ensure that we fully fund our schools so that all of our children have the opportunity to thrive and compete in the 21st century. Healthcare. We need to expand Medicaid. The legislature has blocked Medicaid expansion, costing Eastern North Carolina billions of dollars that would have been in our economy and instead has gone to other states. They have denied over 600,000 hard-working people access to health care. That is a crime. Rural infrastructure. The pandemic has highlighted how much we need to expand broadband and rural health care. We need to do something to cut the disparity in our society.
Republicans in the General Assembly have placed a priority on responsible government spending that has resulted in our state building a strong rainy day fund. This strategy has put us in a better position to handle the projected revenue shortfalls caused by the coronavirus shutdown. Our economy will recover by following the same model of fiscal responsibility that has been in place for the last decade. Gas tax revenues have been declining for years due to lower gasoline prices, electric cars, and more fuel-efficient automobiles. Multiple options have been kicked around to address the needed revenue, such as fees on miles traveled and more taxes on electric vehicles. Considering the recent changes in transportation, the current user pay model will have to be expanded to cover our state's long-term infrastructure needs.
The pandemic will affect our state budget, and in North Carolina, we are required to have a balanced budget. I will review the budget, cut necessary spending, and defer spending that is not currently critical, and find the money to fund our schools, healthcare system, and make investments in our local economies. We may need to look at a bond to cover necessary current education and human needs. We need to work with our partners in the federal and local governments to ensure that our citizens' necessary needs are met and we keep investing in North Carolina. The people of North Carolina are resilient, and through strong leadership, we can all be safe and get back to work. Support me, and let's get North Carolina back on the right track.
As the next state senator for District 11, I will continue to work on the issues that are a priority for my constituents, such as relief and recovery efforts from COVID-19, increasing teacher pay, supporting local businesses and employees, advocating for law enforcement, and defending our Second Amendment rights. I understand the importance of smart recovery programs that will benefit all aspects of our diverse economy, such as small business, agriculture, and large companies. Please join me in building a stronger and safer future for Johnston and Nash counties by casting your vote for me, Lisa Barnes, on November 3rd. Thank you, and please visit my website, lisastonebarnes.com, for more information.
I want to take this opportunity to explain some of the ads that have been going around about a generator. When Fran hit, it was devastating to Johnston County, including our farming community. It destroyed the crops in the fields, and the only crop or livelihood farmers had left was the tobacco in the barns. I called Raleigh and asked for the generators to be made available to the farmers after all human needs were met. That helped at least 8 tobacco farmers, and one of the generators ended up with the Pope family, who happened to be farming on some of our family land. This was an attack by our opponents 24 years ago that was debunked then in the press. This is a kind of false attack ad that tries to keep good people from running for office and hurts our democracy. I've always fought for the needs of our community, and I will continue to do so with your vote. Thank you.
Education is a very complex and broad topic, but at the end of the day, it's really about people and relationships. It's about students and their families, the teachers who serve them, and local school leaders. I've spent thousands of hours building relationships across the state with superintendents, local leaders, school advocacy groups, the legislature, the State Board of Education, and what I've learned is that we have 115 different school districts across our state, and they're all different. The best way that I can be a champion for local schools and the people who lead them is to advocate and be a champion for local control. Local control is best because it means that the resources that schools need are best matched and determined by those who live in the community, not by people in Raleigh. The best thing that we can do to support all people who work in schools and students is to fully fund school personnel. School personnel are people like school resource officers, counselors, school nurses, social workers. These people are the backbone of the school, making sure that all students' needs are met. When these folks are in short supply, it means that teachers end up having to take responsibility to meet their students' basic needs before they can be ready to learn. And this is too much for one person to take on. And so when we fully fund these school support personnel folks, they will be there to help students be ready to learn so that teachers can do what they do best, which is engage their students in learning. I really hope that we see some permanent changes being made to the way we organize schools across the state. I think COVID-19 has shined a light on many opportunities to do a better job. When I think about how we're doing overall in educating our children, I look to data. And the data is very clear that we're not educating all students to the best of our ability. Only 65% of students across the state enter high school able to read and write at grade level. And when we break this down by income, we find that there's a huge gap between low-income students and their wealthier counterparts. In fact, only 12% of African American students in our state enter high school reading and doing math on grade level. We've got to do a better job. Our students' futures depend on it, and our economy depends on it. My name is Catherine Truitt, and I'm the Republican nominee for Superintendent of Public Instruction. I decided to run for this role because I know in my heart of hearts that the surest pathway to freedom and prosperity in this country is still education. We've got some work to do, but I'm a lifelong educator who's taught in Johnston County, as well as served under Governor Pat McCrory as his education advisor, and now I lead a 100% online nonprofit university whose students have had a 100% uninterrupted education experience since March. We have got to start looking for ways to innovate to improve outcomes for all children in North Carolina. Our future and our economy depend on it.